Hello, I'm Richard, and in the next 20 minutes, we're going to take you through Green Frontiers 2019, which was the winner of the most sustainable event at the ICE Awards in 20. We'll run you through who we are, a little bit about the event itself, its purpose and objectives, how we brought sustainability to life, some of our challenges and learns. But first of all, I think it's only right that we meet the team. We brought together a group of people that were from across the function who all had a passion about green. So first, let's meet Jordana.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jordana. I work in the Barclays international team, and I managed the stakeholders, venue and the contract for Green Frontiers.
I'm Richard, we've already met, and I looked after the Dalman for the project, which is all the registrations and follow-up for all of our delegates, as well as reporting back to the business on numbers.
I'm Kira. I work within the UK events team for Barclays and manage the production and exhibition for Green Frontiers. Jordana, shall I let you kick off with a little bit of background around the event?
This event was a follow-on for the 2018 inaugural event that kick-started our public conversation on green finance. So in 2019, we wanted the event to be bigger and better while promoting three key business areas. So the first purpose was to promote Barclays as the leading advocate of green finance and a thought leader in climate considerations. The second was to position Barclays as a facilitator for clients navigating their way through all the concerning opportunities and risks within green. And then finally, we had to promote green Barclays finance ambitions alongside our existing product suite. So it was important from the get-go that we wanted to invite a cross-section of customers, clients and colleagues to this event to initiate conversations that may not be happening within business areas. So holding an event of this size would mean that we can do this quickly and efficiently as possible. From our perspective, and I hope Rich and Kira that you agree with this, that we have to be advocates for the green discussions happening within this setting. We had to rethink our main aims as planners producing this event. We needed to make sure that we had thought about every element in the planning process and how we can make it sustainable to match the event's goals. And it also meant that we had to practice what we preach. So Kira, you were key in bringing the whole session to life through vivid and engaging production, which played a big role in our conversations in planning and delivery. What were your main objectives when kicking things off?
So I suppose as this event sees such a range of clients, innovators and entrepreneurs all come together, we needed to create a platform for networking as well as make it a really memorable event experience. So the key production objectives, I'd say, were creating an immersive main room that really brought to life the agenda and the content that we were covering, and also creating a networking space and a platform for 9 companies to showcase some of the innovative work they're doing. The companies themselves are selected through Barclays partnerships with the Unreasonable Group and Rise Accelerator programme, and are really doing some amazing things in driving change in the sustainability and ESG space, which we felt was really important to showcase. One exhibitor, for example, had built an app platform where leftover food and household items can be shared rather than thrown away. Another developed a completely natural refrigerated technology, which can last up to 12 days without power, which means it can be used to store things like life-saving vaccines, which will really make a difference for countries with little or no power supply. So taking all of that into account, our next thought was then, okay, so how do we do this, but really make sure that being sustainable remains at the forefront? So we built out a brief with all of the key elements that we wanted to see and invited suppliers to pitch. Part of the brief described how we needed them to partner and work really closely with the venue, probably more so than usual, and their on-site AV team. This was so that we could really make good use of the setup and what the venue had there already, to then minimise having to bring in more equipment, which in turn means more delivery, more transport emissions. The other was really to challenge our thinking and make sure all the elements were locally sourced and could be recycled or repurposed wherever we could. Our chosen supplier did a great job at approaching the brief, and we worked really closely with them and the venue to build out the ideas and really shape the concept and the delivery, which we'll cover in a little while. The next big piece to consider was in the format and the agenda, which also took a lot of consideration. So, Jordana, do you want to talk a little bit around how we approach that?
Yeah, of course. So to give everyone a bit of flavour for the event, we went for a half-day conference to ensure that we were using our attendees' time wisely and that we weren't attempting to be over-ambitious with our content and messaging. It meant that we could start in the afternoon with some networking and lunch, and then we could end with networking drinks as well, which does feel like a bit of a thing of the past at the moment. Our first decision as a planning team was to make sure that we were telling a story. So topics for the agenda were really hard to identify, which when we initially received the brief. Because of this, we tasked ourselves with understanding the Green position currently, which helped us then put together a skeleton agenda to take to our stakeholders. As ESG is a big topic and it covers so many areas, we thought that it was essential to show that we also understood what the business considerations were, and that we wanted to be a part of the conversation in the whole planning process to help them navigate the content. So thinking back to 2019, we decided to keep it simple. Let's tell a story, let's stick to key trends that we're seeing. And in the end, as in the story, we produced a beginning, middle and end. The story was set within an opening keynote and a closing keynote, which was hosted by our CEO, Jess Staley, and with Michael Bloomberg. We did that to ensure that we retained the audience engagement. So the beginning of the story was us using science to set the scene and explore the bigger picture. We then moved on to the middle, which needed to identify the importance of the topic, and we used politics and regulation to do that, to show levers of change and how that could highlight this. Then coming to the end, we focused on the current business status quo, from startups to established corporates who are aiming to profit and influence the green economy. It was important for us to show the range of different businesses that are focused on that at the moment. And one last little thing to add is that one really enjoyable thing for all of us was working with our stakeholders and the business throughout the planning process and being collaborative. So suggesting topics, best suited formats for each session during the afternoon, and just making sure that we're not just simply badge holders, which was nice.
So now looking at how we put this into action, and throughout the planning, we used the thought process of reduce, reuse, recycle, and created our two main spaces. We had an immersive main room, and then the registration, catering and exhibition space, which was plotted out with the registration on entrance, the catering positioned along the back of the room, and the exhibitor booths plotted throughout the space to really encourage a good, delicate flow and create the ideal space for networking. In the main room, rather than bringing in a large purpose-built stage set, we looked at what would really complement what was already in the room and utilise as much of the venue staging and AV equipment as we could. We created a canopy effect on the ceiling and walls using lighting and moving foliage projection. We paired that with natural sounds playing in the background, which really helped create an impactful sensory experience when delegates entered the room and during breaks. This was a really cost-effective option and looked great. For the exhibition, each stand was built from corrugated cardboard panels, which was easy to transport and fully recycled. For some exhibitors, they actually took their panels away after the event and reused them. Each exhibitor was able to brand their stand with company logos and images, making each one unique. And the stand had either a screen or an iPad for video or app content. So there wasn't any need for printing leaflets and banners, which we know can be quite wasteful and costly. The end result had a professional finish and received great feedback from attendees and exhibitors themselves. When we originally contracted the venue, we had many conversations about their sustainability practices. So, Joel, did you want to mention some of the key considerations there?
Yeah, of course. So, after looking at nearly every large, we made our decisions based on having extensive conversations with the venue to see what they will or won't offer in terms of sustainable practices and how willing they were to work with us in new processes or ways of working, especially if they've not done something before. So in 2019, it was hard to find a venue that ticked all of those boxes, and I'm sure that's probably similar to now. We just needed to ensure that we were being as green as possible and that we could cope with the numbers of people that we were looking to host as well. So we had to make sure that the promises that attracted us to the venue also didn't change throughout the planning process, making sure everyone followed through on their commitments to a green delivery, even if it did complicate a few things along the way. So we had a few main key points with the venue that we wanted to focus on. So as Kira, you mentioned earlier, the AV equipment and ensuring that we could work as a team with the in-house techs and our preferred production company. And then secondly, challenging the normal, extensive, plentiful buffet menu offering. So we had to think about how we could make sure our waste was as low as possible in terms of food. So we obviously catered for the numbers that we expected, minus no-shows, which you always expect, but then also taking into account that not everyone would eat every single dish either. So at some points we had to let the buffet run out. So whilst it looked like there wasn't as much food on offer, everyone had still eaten, and we were thinking about our food waste. So that was quite an interesting point that came up in some of our feedback, as well as the point that we had offered mostly vegan and vegetarian food with only one meat option. So I guess for us, it was just challenging the normal ideas of what attendees expect of an event in terms of their food and their catering offerings. In addition to that, we also spoke a lot about local sourcing, where the food was produced, which also highlighted key considerations in terms of what does local and what does sustainable mean to you as a supplier. So that encouraged a lot of active conversation as well. And obviously we look to do no single use, which is a given. So Rich, you were instrumental in the whole delegate journey. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So picking up what Georgiana was saying, we really tried to practice what we preached. We used an online system for registration to send out confirmation and information to our delegates, so there was no paper waste there. And if you turned up on the day as well, you were invited to register via an iPad to try and take out as much paper waste as possible. We looked for alternatives to badges, which I have to be honest, there aren't that many on the market. So we went back to our reduce, reuse and recycle mantra, and we looked at recycled paper in our badges and then asked delegates to return them into our recycling bins as they left at the end of the day. We took our delegates a little bit out of their comfort zone and away from that usual bump of paper that they have, and we asked them to look for signage around our venue that was on projections or screens and encourage them to navigate the space themselves, taking in the exhibition and learning as they went. This meant at times we had to hold their hands a little bit more than we usually would, but hopefully it meant that they went home without that bag of paper waste and also having a better journey. Ultimately, this meant we got some great feedback, some of which you can see on the screen now. However, there were some learns that we could use not only if we were to replicate this event again, but also at some of our other events going forward.
So I'll just run through a few quick learns that I came to experience. So one key thing was challenging how our stakeholders view a green event. Sustainable doesn't always mean expensive. It might mean that you need a little bit more time to plan the event, to think about every single element that you need to now consider. You need to think about reducing your impact. And again, following on from what Rich said, reduce, reuse, recycle, change your mentality. But I think we proved, and hopefully other people have proved, that it's certainly not impossible and it doesn't have to impact your budget line that much. And I guess the last thing as well was we have to change our stakeholders' perspectives on how they work with us as well, so that we can provide insight and information on content that we've seen delivered externally as well as internally, so speakers, how best to incorporate green into an agenda that they've planned, and how we can bring that to life. And that we also, I think as event planners, we love to collaborate, and that we can provide value in some different ways. So Kira, what are your key learns?
For production was us as event managers really taking the brief and challenging ourselves and our suppliers to approach each part of the event with a sustainable lens, while still being able to keep the right balance of production, which can be quite hard. We still wanted to transform the spaces without compromising on the equipment needed for the speakers, visuals, the lighting and sound. That also meant a lot more testing and checking the on-site tech equipment worked when paired with the production suppliers to make sure there were no issues or surprises on the day. This did take a lot of time and the need to brief two AV contacts to work together, but it was definitely worthwhile to get the outcome we needed, and it's definitely something we've taken with us for future events.
We had to re-educate our delegates. You know, we're all used to turning up to events, being handed a bag and then going around to exhibitors or stalls and collecting loads of paper information. Here, we didn't want them to do that. We wanted them to go home empty-handed, but full of knowledge. And that meant that they had to navigate the space themselves, ask questions and get involved in what was happening. To some of our delegates, they found it a bit baffling that we weren't going to give them a printout. They weren't going to get leaflets. But for us, it was really important for us to practice what we preached even. And in order to keep our learns from the event, we've done a few things moving forward. First of all, as a function, we've set up Team Green. This gives everybody a checklist to work through when they're pulling together events, and things to look for, easy things like reducing that paper waste, using some of the in-house tech, or just cutting down on the buffet so there's not so much food waste at the end of the day. We've shared knowledge and we continue to do that in newsletters between our function and sharing information from our event to other events that are going forward. We're more thoughtful about how we reduce, reuse and recycle, whether that is collateral that you get at an event, how your badge is printed when you get it, or the gifts that you get. Are they recyclable? Do people want to use them again? Are they even a practical thing to give? And we found virtual has helped us do this. You know, we've all been at home a bit more, which means we're not traveling as much. That means, you know, our carbon footprint does go down, and it's made us all a little bit more tech savvy. So it means when people turn up back at our in-person events, when we ask them to download an app, use a screen, register online, we're hoping that that means that you're going to be more willing to do it and more willing to take part. Really, this event for us has led as a springboard to kind of learn, grow and adapt our event practices so that we can be more green and we can apply that green lens to the events that we do, while still making it practical to put on events. So on behalf of Jordana, Kira and myself, thanks for joining us to learn about Green Frontiers, and thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day.